Welcome to Wellness with Purpose.
A lot of employees have no idea what physical therapy is or what it can do. It's not simply, I broke my leg, help me get better. There is not healthcare equity in the workplace, even though people have access to their employee-sponsored health insurance plan. If they don't understand it, they don't feel like they can afford the premium, or they cannot leave work to go to an appointment, and often people are working 10 to 12 hours, that is not healthcare equity. So how can we make them have a better life with these sorts of services? People just use the emergency department where they don't seek care until they're very ill.
Today, we have a lady. She's not waiting for the people to walk into the clinic. She's walking into their workplace, meeting employee where they actually are. On the floor, at the warehouse, and at the desk. And she has been doing it for many years. Dr. Chris McCallum is a doctor of physical therapy, the founder of McCallum Injury Prevention and Care in Denver. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Chris, before we get into the work, just take me back. You started your career as a traveling PT, moving around before settling in Colorado. Was there any moment where something just clicked and you thought, this is the direction I want to go?
Yeah, one of my placements was an aerospace company, and they had a little medical clinic where the PT was also stationed. So I got to walk through where they were building rockets when I was not working with people. And I just thought, wow, I don't really know what people do for a living, and this is super cool. And so that got me interested in it. And then doing standard brick and mortar physical therapy and working for someone else and having high overhead, really, it was pretty much a drain on my career, and I was kind of pretty burnt out. And so I saw an ad for a job working with a fitness company and working with employees, and I thought, that sounds great. And as I started doing it, it was just, I knew it's where I was meant to be.
Most physical therapists, they build a clinic, they had a sign and wait for the patient to come. And you just flip the model completely. You go to the employer. So when you first started on-site PT at an employer location, what made you believe that this was the right way to do it?
I didn't start this model. I just happened to kind of grow it and try and promote it, wrote a book about it and that sort of thing. The military has been doing this since the early 70s or the late 70s, in which they were running out of orthopedics providers. And so they allowed physical therapists to be on site and to work as orthopedic specialists, to be first contact for those sorts of injuries, which there are a lot of with the heavy training that the military does. And so it just made sense to me that if I'm going to be treating people and helping them with injuries and helping them stay healthy, that I should know what they do for a living. And as I started doing the work, I realized a lot of employees have no idea what physical therapy is or what it can do. It's not simply, I broke my leg, help me get better. And so it just was a really good match for growth on both sides.
This is a different way of thinking about the care delivery. Of course, I appreciate it. You have also written the book, The On-Site Physical Therapist, which literally teaches the other PT how to do what you do. So what was that moment you decided, okay, I need to document this and share it with the other profession?
Well, I think sometimes I have a very creative side. I'm a musician and I write lyrics and stuff. And so I was missing that in my life. And then COVID came along. And as I was working with my clients in the workplaces like food delivery and warehousing and transportation, all of these essential workers, they just were not getting what they needed from healthcare and from wellness. And I was in such a great position to be a resource for them and to help direct them to the type of care they needed, even if it wasn't physical therapy expertise. And it just really, that whole time really exposed what our essential workers need. And also physical therapists, you know, I've been a PT for 20, 30 years or something. The physical therapist career span is like 6 years now, which is horrible because they go to school for 7 or 8 to get their degree. And so I just feel like this model needed to be shown, one, to physical therapists to hopefully preserve the career, because it's an awesome career, but also to employers, because it's a low cost way to give employees what they need, help them actually use the healthcare that most companies are already paying for, and sooner, because healthcare literacy, if it's not where it needs to be, people just use the emergency department where they don't seek care until they're very ill.
While you're writing the book, what was actually hard for you? Obviously, obviously that there must be stuff that doesn't make into your book.
The piece that isn't in the book that is hard, it's hard to do this as a physical therapist, but also the employers they're just so ingrained in the old model that it's really hard to change. I mean, most employers, once they get something going that they feel is kind of working, they're reluctant to change, most bigger employers. And so they're not willing to take the risk to provide better services, even though there may be some other risks associated with it. So having that concrete mental change that is not happening for employers. And then, just fighting the insurance industrial complex, which they just want premiums. They are not going to encourage care, because if they do that, then they put money out and they don't have profits. And that's kind of a thing I had to not go on and on about politically, because it's definitely not right.
That's tough part. Like insurance, this all insurance thing is really complex and very difficult to understand for a common people like us. Yeah, every founder has their own version of that story. And then, of course, you talked about the unglamorous, the middle part. It really makes the outcomes mean something. Because of this unglamorous part, that's why you wrote this book, so that the people may aware of what is actually the physical therapy means for the employee. Wonderful. So for someone who is listening, has never heard of on-site physical therapy. So can you just break it down, like simply what does the typical day would look like?
Sure. So it's called on-site physical therapy, but really it's on-site musculoskeletal care and early access interventions. So in a typical brick and mortar PT clinic, you go in and there is someone waiting for you at the first minute of your day. So that may not be the case. I will set up with an employer and I just need a cubicle or a small corner somewhere with a little bit of privacy, portable massage table, some resistance bands, a couple hot and cold packs. So it's a pretty simple setup. And I will set up a schedule for people that need things, and they can just sign up online for a 15-minute appointment. But oftentimes I'm out talking with the employees in the morning, saying hello, asking them how they are, watching them work. I might take a stretching strap out to the workplace and just say, hey, how about this shoulder stretch? Do you like it? Oh yeah, that feels good. And so trying to understand what they do and have them show me that, because they are certainly the experts at their jobs. And then trying to find things that might help them. Like, I had someone who was limping around and they had leg pain, and it had nothing to do with therapy, but I looked at their leg and said, you need to see a doctor and tell them this. So they went. A week later, they got a small intervention and they felt fine. And they had been limping around for months. So being able to be there for them and be a resource for them.
It's like being a healthcare team inside the company itself.
For sure.
So you work across manufacturing, warehousing, and the construction offices, very different environments. How do you customize your approach when the risk profiles is so different from one industry to the next?
It's super important as you enter trying to find a new client to find out what their needs are and where their pain points are. So they may be doing very well with, let's say, construction with the larger injuries, but they may have repetitive strain from people that are loading product in the warehouse. So you may be in the warehouse before they even get to the construction site. Or maybe their issues are not workers' comp related. Maybe their issues are just musculoskeletal costs and general presenteeism. And for those that don't know, presenteeism is people are at work, but their productivity is poor, their morale is poor, and it affects what they do as well as their teammates. So most healthcare costs, if we were to look at employers, not just workers' comp, it's 33% of their healthcare costs are musculoskeletal in nature. And so that's something I can help with, whether it be, I hurt myself at work, or I feel discomfort at work. Can you help me? Or I sprained my ankle last weekend playing with my kids, and now my work is suffering. Either way, a healthier employee helps the company.
Of course. It's like treating a manufacturing industry people different from the people in the warehousing. Do you feel that your approach would be different, or is it more based on your, what you said, that muscular level ligament problems? Is it specific to that, or like you have a different approach for a different people? Because of course they might have a different kind of an injury. If the warehouse people have a different kind of injury than the people who are sitting for longer hours.
Think of a physical therapist as a movement specialist. And if that's the base that we're coming from, then what they do for a living plays less of a role. Certainly me knowing what they do helps direct the care and direct my interventions. But when I'm doing ergonomic assessments and things like that, then it looks very different. But when I am teaching people to move and talking about the physiology of tissue healing and that sort of thing, those things are pretty standard, using that portion of my expertise.
That makes sense. I understand. You also talk about building a culture of health, not just treating injuries. So, of course, that's a big shift from traditional models. How are you actually get to buy in, like from employees on the floor who might be skeptical of someone new showing up into their workplace?
Well, it's never quick unless they've already had someone on site. It's a matter of asking questions and again, treating the employee as the expert that they are. When I'm doing an intervention with someone, if they're having some kind of more chronic or built up musculoskeletal problem, I'll certainly talk to them about what they eat and inflammation and see if they're willing or able to make some changes in that regard to see how they feel. I'm very aware of and try to tie into the employer's health and benefits program. So a lot of them have, you have to complete your health assessment. Oh, I don't have time for that. But you get $50 if you do it, right? So even though the rewards for some of these programs are monetary, which that works better for some people than them saying, I'm going to get healthier, but maybe getting them into the employer's programs and promoting those and giving them some education as to how it's going to help them will push them along and make them more autonomous and provide more self-care opportunities for them.
Yeah, I hear you. Like trust is earned differently in a warehouse versus a boardroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love the nuances. So what's one thing you see in the employee which is completely wrong about workplace injury prevention? Like a misconception you find yourself correcting over and over again?
Well, from a interactive standpoint, the notion that physical therapy is an after service. So physical therapists started out as treatment aids 100 plus years ago. And physical therapy has really evolved to be about movement and health and prevention and wellness and getting to people first and helping be a gatekeeper. And so people say, well, I don't have a problem. Well, you could probably feel better. Discomfort is a sign of something building up, whether it be emotional stress, physical stress, physiological things, repetitive movement. So those are things that we can help with before they become injuries. So changing it from a cut and a Band-Aid being an injury and physical therapy to the wellness and medical knowledge that we have to either provide care or early intervention or get people to the right place.
So do you have any a model to advocate this kind of an information to the employer, or you just, whatever you have an experience so far, you just present them and make them aware that this is required or something like that? So how do you advocate them about that?
Do you mean when I'm trying to get a new client or when I have been there a while?
Yeah, about the misconception they have, how do you advocate them?
We look at some of the statistics of musculoskeletal injuries and of physical therapy being an intervention early in someone's injury versus late, and how much cost savings. I mean, it could be tens of thousands of dollars per case. So providing that kind of data, but then also showing how early physical therapy reduces all healthcare costs. When people see a physical therapist earlier, it reduces their healthcare costs in total for the whole year.
Before the injury can become a serious problem, you address them ahead of a time. Wonderful. Got it. So let's talk about some challenges. You are running a business. You are also the founder, the relationship manager, and the operation person. So what part of the business side has surprised you the most? Something you don't see coming when you started?
Well, you can never turn it off of your head. You're always thinking about it. And that's something you just have to make peace with. There are a lot of positives. I can truly do the right thing as an employer. If an employee is sick or they have a sudden relative injury or, something like that, I can just say go and I'll take care of it. So the positive is I can do the right thing. And then the negative is I have to deal with, the chaos that ensues, who's going to cover this site and that sort of thing. I will say that My challenges have been probably smaller because I'm a smaller business, but using resources in the small business community, if I could just say a few, the SBA.gov, the local small business development center in your town. Small businesses will promote other small businesses. So I have a small business attorney who turned me on to a small business accountant who turned me on to a small business insurance provider. And so finding those things and really committing to that network, it's a little bit hard initially, but it's really worthwhile.
That's something a lot of founders feel, but they rarely say it out loud. And of course, it takes courage to name it. Wonderful. When you're trying to grow, whether that's landing a new customer or maybe landing a new employee partner or scaling your program. Of course, we have already talked about the hardest part, but also you think that is it a visibility, capacity, or something else entirely?
No, I think it's all of those things. I'm a small business, so visibility is only what I make it. Capacity is, in this market, I'm just hiring for my clients as they need. And of course, they always want me there some of the time, at least initially. So trying to find a way to make all the clients happy, find the right employee partner for me, for the client, and then just getting your foot in the door, which is, I don't think anybody doesn't have that problem.
Do you travel a lot for your client? How far distance you can go to seek your clients?
So I'm pretty local, Metro Denver. I might go up maybe 40 miles north or south or something, but it's just not worth it to have to, with such a small company, to court somebody down there. And then even if you hire someone that's 40 miles away that's nearby, when they're ill, how are you going to cover? So the logistics of it is not something I enjoy. It's not my strong suit per se. Some people would be fine with that risk, but
what I see is this real challenges in the model is demonstrating the ROI to employers. Of course, they want the numbers, what's the component cost. So how do you currently track and communicate that impact? Does it feel messy or maybe incomplete for you?
So I do have some metrics from prior employers or current clients, prior clients, not employers. So I can use those as a demonstration as well as some testimonials, but there is plenty of data probably in the last 3 to 5 years that shows how much it costs to have a musculoskeletal injury, specifically work-related. OSHA is a great resource for that. And then you can request your client's data, not personalized, or your prospective client's data, and you can do a bit of analysis on it for them. So there are some numerical ways to show the ROI. And the bottom line is, even if they break even on your service and the injuries, the VOI is huge because employees are seeking care and employees feel cared for. Sometimes it's been called the best benefit they have to be able to come see a therapist when they feel like they need to.
It completely matters. The story that you tell that the VOI is quite huge, then the ROI, of course, data and storytelling, they pull you in a different direction sometimes, but yes. And what are the operation side? I mean, like managing multiple clients, coordinating with the occupational health terms, and keeping consistent care quality. So where do the day-to-day workflow feel strained to you?
So I feel like at this point in my career, I'm such an advocate for the patient. And so talking with the physician or the case manager for workers' compensation, it's just part of what we do. If we were to look at a matrix of the whole workers' comp system and you have an on-site care provider like a PT, they're the center. They can talk to everybody. They can talk to the employee, the employer, the vocational rehab, the supervisor, the safety rep, the physician, and the case manager. And they are not all talking to each other. And so it's, again, this great opportunity to help direct this wonderful orchestra of people that really just want the employee to be back working and to be healthy.
These are the gaps that you are talking about. And what those operational gaps stays unresolved. So is there a real cost?
Well, the cost is that things don't happen as quickly or as efficiently. And so if someone is off work, you get longer time off of work, which is a huge cost. And the longer someone is away from work, the research clearly shows they're more likely to develop a chronic disability. Right. So as a physical therapist, being able to say what safe on-site modified duty would be, and getting the employee back to the workplace is huge for preventing chronic disability.
I just wanted to shift gears here and ask you very honestly, how does you feel about AI right now, specifically on the context of physical therapy and the workplace wellness? Are you excited, cautious, or somewhere in the middle?
Well, from a professional standpoint, I think it's helpful to provide succinct care recommendations if you were using it as a clinician. It's certainly helpful in documentation and making workflows more efficient, I guess is the right word. In terms of wellness, maybe you can fill me in how it's being used a little bit more. In terms of being represented as physical therapy, I think that there's a huge liability there, and there are companies that are using AI and non-physical therapists to do things like exercise therapy, and people think it's physical therapy, and our expertise is not represented in that, and so that's a big downside. In terms of wellness, maybe give me a few pointers and I'll give you my opinion on that.
I think like a media ad, like a physical therapy, you guys, maybe you don't have your brand awareness as a physical therapist who are working for different industries. You are not just a brick and mortar. Of course you are, but you are also going to different places. You're going on-site physical therapy. But I think this kind of a thing, it needs a brand awareness. And of course, the awareness that on-site physical therapy is available and it is possible and it is covered in your insurance, but most people, they don't know. So yeah, awareness, it can be done by AI, of course, through branding, through ads, through advocating. And whenever you go to some platform, you just showcase, I mean, you can just express, or maybe you can do all the post media thing handled by the AI, and the rest is just you are advocating what is the on-site physical therapy is all about. So of course, there's a lot of opportunities here, but of course, the brand awareness is, I think, is the most important thing, because I never heard of this on-site therapy. So that's why I was intrigued by the idea of talking to you and getting more insight of what it is about. That's why I wanted to have you on my podcast.
Well, I'm glad you did. I have definitely started using AI for doing, weekly things online. And I will just give it some points and say, do the research for me, and then I will check the research, of course. But it's really opened my eyes to language that other people might find beneficial instead of everything coming from my mouth. And so it's been super helpful in terms of promotion and, nice, clean presentations and that sort of thing.
So if I say that if AI could free up your 5 to 10 hours a week, things like you said, documentation is one thing, maybe scheduling follow-ups or tracking the outcomes. So what do you think, would you do actually with that time? Who would benefit the most?
I think it would allow me to spend more time looking at people and the processes. And so it would move me ahead of the injury, upstream of the injury a little bit more. And it would also allow me to have better metrics, I think. So again, to just continue to promote what we do and show employers that it's helping them or clients that it's helping them.
I ask that because I think the answers reveals what matters most to someone. And yeah, of course, you say that you will be more hands-on than doing the stuff back at your office. Oh yeah. So of course, and I have few more questions. I think
Sure.
we are running on time, but looking forward, what feels like the next meaningful chapter? Is there something you're building towards or a problem you haven't solved yet? And you know that it's coming.
I would like more employers to call me and ask me about this. I don't really care to grow a big business. I just want to have clients and make a good living, and I really want to have that impact. So that would be the first thing, because if we go back to early in this podcast, and I was talking about the essential workers, and if there's one thing that time in 2020 gave us was an awareness of how underserved our essential workers are. Most employees, really, I call them essential workers. But so there is not healthcare equity in the workplace, even though people have access to their employee-sponsored health insurance plan. If they don't understand it, they don't feel like they can afford the premium, or they cannot leave work to go to an appointment and often people are working 10 to 12 hours, that is not healthcare equity. So how can we make them have a better life with these sorts of services?
Wonderful. I hear you. Chris. So, Chris, this has been such a real and ground conversation, and I really appreciated how you have openly shared not just the wins, also the actual texture of what it likes to build something meaningful in the space. And you are completely changing the game. And it really stand out how much you care about the workers, about your profession, and doing things it right. So, thank you so much for being here. This is genuinely one of my favorite conversations on this show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me, and I appreciate what you are doing for the wellness industry.
Thank you. And everyone who is listening, thank you for tuning to Wellness with Purpose. And if this episode resonates you, and share it with your colleague, employer, or someone who cares about the people at work. We'll see you next one. Thank you.